Story 1. Krampus. Each year on December 5th, a person in my hometown is brutally murdered. The police are at a loss with each victim. A poetic story is left behind. Below are the stories from the past 3 years. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Frederick loved to smile, for he was always glad, happy, warm, and gentle, never, ever sad. But Frederick had a secret, one he only knew. This man loved to strangle children. He turned them cold and blue. The townsfolk never found them, for he was very smart. Frederick took their corpses and pulled them all apart. It couldn't be young Frederick. Everyone would say he is a man of God. We always see him pray. The cold night came, and Frederick rested his head, but soon he heard a scratching underneath his bed. Frederick trembled as he looked, a lamp in hand on his bedroom floor. The demon had a plan. Away with you, beast, the night is dark and long. You have no business here, for I have done no wrong. Krampus only laughed as he shook his rusty chain. He hung Frederick by the neck until he writhed in pain. The links constricted, digging into skin. Frederick then cried out, paying for his sin. He begged and pleaded until his final breath. With a beautiful snap, Frederick bled to death. Krampus hung him out to dry, and all the townsfolk began to cry. But no, the children, for now their souls were free, and under Frederick's body the phantoms danced with glee. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Greta loved herself more than she could bear. She ever had enough and could never, ever share. Want was never more, it was only need. Her envy grew and grew, and with it came her greed. Greta needed more, but money wasn't flush, so she stole from our family. It gave her quite the rush. It is not enough. To herself she would say, I must have it all. There is no other way. Into her grandparents' home Greta crept inside. They had many treasures, jewelry and gemstones by. But when she looked about, wealth she did not find. Only ancient Krampus with something on his mind. Greta shrieked and trembled, staring at his claws. She knew here would be no mercy from this evil Santa Claus. You shall have the riches, Krampus said with a grin, and he gave them to her after peeling off her skin. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Herman was a doctor, for that's what he would say. And every single patient they would have to pay, he cut and pulled and burned. And after he was done, for more he always yearned. This surgeon was a butcher who had a taste for swine. With their bleeding flesh he'd pair a fine red wine. The hunger took him, body, mind, and soul. Yet this evil, it never took its toll. Herman was alone in his chair. He sat. All this human meat had made him very fat. He drifted off to slumber and began to snore until an angry Krampus burst through the door. Herman could not move. He wet himself in fright. Krampus licked his lips and let out a squeal of delight. First he gouged out his eyes, and Herman could not see. Then Krampus filleted his tongue. It was tender as could be. Christmas is joyo, U.S., full of love and cheer. But you must remember the one that we all fear. So be kind to one another. Show love and heed this text, or Krampus will find you, and you will certainly be next. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The police are seeking any information that may help bring the killer. Justice, as of this morning, 3 more bodies have been found in a neighboring village. Story 2. Halloween 64. I had heard rumors of the game's existence on various gaming sites and messages boards, but I never thought it was actually real. I spent a little over a year trying to track down a copy, but I always came up empty-handed. That was until a few weeks ago, when the game decided to find me. I am here to beg you, do not go looking for it. If an unfamiliar game shows up at your door, leave it be. It can disguise itself under any platform and does not abide by the rules of our universe. If you are unfortunate enough to play it, I will provide instructions below to hopefully give you a fighting chance. The game decided to present itself to me on a Sunday at 12 a.m. It had manifested itself into a blank Nintendo 64 cartridge with no writing or sticker logo, and was placed outside my front door with no note or instruction. I paced around for 20 minutes and tried to comprehend where it had come from and who had delivered it. Eventually, I hooked up my console and inserted the cartridge. My version of the game had titled itself Halloween, 64 inches, and included an inverted Nintendo logo. It also displayed a few presumably non-existent dev companies like Eulogy Inc. and Last Breath Software. The title screen included the words Halloween 64. Press start in text made to look like cheesy green slime. As soon as the game begins, you will be unable to quit until it is complete. I am sure you're thinking, just turn it off, unplug it, or walk away. If only it were that simple. The game has several methods of self-defense, and the harder you try and disrupt it, the stronger it becomes. The power function of the console will not respond. If you try to turn it off, the red power light remains on and the system operates like normal. The cartridge cannot be removed. It does not matter how hard you pull. It will stay locked in place. If you annoy it enough, the cart will become scalding hot and burn your skin to the bone. In addition to this, all outside communication will be lost. Your phone and internet will not function while the game is running. Any door or window that leads to the outside world will be inaccessible. My front door wouldn't open, and all of my windows became shatterproof. To be honest, I'm not sure if time even passes while playing the game, as every clock in my apartment remained at 12 o'clock while playing. You are given 10 lives. Certain aspects in the game will be mirrored in reality. Any pets you own will die as soon as you lose a life. As you lose more lives, you will get sick, very, very sick. I became nauseous. My head started to pound, and my nose began to bleed. The more lives you lose, the worse you will feel, but you must keep playing. I can only conclude that losing all lives will result in death. Level 8. The neighborhood, your third-person character in. Level 1 is a child dressed in a skeleton costume, carrying a jack-o'-lantern bucket. You start off in the middle of a suburban neighborhood covered in cheap Halloween decor. The street had a striking resemblance to the one I grew up on. I can only assume this is a detail that is different for each player. Although the street appears linear and endless, it is not. As you move forward, the street lights behind you will go out. Do not go into the dark. Keep moving. If you move your character into the dark, you will lose a life. As you play, you will notice the darkness creeping behind you in reality. After a few hours of running down the virtual street, All the lights in my apartment went out one by one. Whatever you hear, see, or feel, it is very important to not take your eyes off of the screen during this level. You will hear doors in your home open and close, footsteps, and a familiar voice whispering in your ear. Do not lose concentration or you will lose more lives. You may even feel a hand rest on your shoulder. Eventually, the level will end without notice. The timer on the screen showed that I ran for 7 hours and 26 minutes before completion. Level 2. The house. Level 2 is displayed in first person. You will enter a house with limited visibility, as a dim flashlight is your only source of illumination. As you progress through this level, you will notice a difference in temperature around you. My apartment was freezing, making it extremely difficult to concentrate. Again, you must keep playing. If you get up and try to adjust your thermostat or get a coat, you will lose a life. I lost 4 lives during this level and started coughing up blood. As you move through the house, you will discover various weapons. When you recover all these weapons, you can progress to level 3. These weapons cannot be used in self-defense. It is best to not equip them, as your character will only use them to commit suicide, thus resulting in the loss of more lives. As you move through the dark house, you will hear and see things that will test your limits as a hum and being. I will not go into detail, but I saw and heard things in the game that were deeply personal, disturbing, and worst of all, genuine. Be prepared to witness every terrible experience of your past, all of those things you have repressed, forgotten, and maybe even went to therapy to try work through. Once again, you must keep playing, and you must collect every weapon. Level 3F. And now, this one, like the last, is in first person. I entered this level with 2 remaining lives, almost certain that I was destined to fail like the former levels. I believe that it is custom and tailored to the person who is playing. You will enter a bedroom and see a person lying on the bed, asleep. They may resemble a loved one, a friend, or yourself. I saw the body of my best friend who passed away 10 years ago. You will have access to every weapon you grabbed in level 2. A knife, blowtorch, baseball bat, and screwdriver. Your objective is simple. Kill the person in the bed. They will not fight back. Once their health bar is diminished, you will win the game. I chose the knife. I walked up to the bed, aimed, and struck the body with the blade. White-hot pain filled my eyes, and I instantly discovered the catch of level 3. Whatever pain you inflict on the person, you will feel in reality. You will not lose any blood. You will lose consciousness, and you will not die, but you will feel every single sensation. If you take too long in between blows, your player will lose a life. The person on the bed will beg you to stop. They will scream your name again and again. It took me 20 minutes to stab them to death, and I could barely hold the controller when it was over. I completed it with just 1 life remaining. My body was cold, frail, and broken. I remember reading "game complete" on the screen just before blacking out. I am not sure who the game will choose next, or if it already has chose, and I just pray that they will read this before it's too late. Story 3. To befriend the diseased. A silver gray car drove me by, allowing water from the newly formed puddle beside the sidewalk to splash up at me. This left my pants soaking wet and the side of my face splattered with murky rainwater. Normally, I let out a low attention-craving sigh, curse the driver, or raise my middle finger, even though I knew they'd probably not care enough to notice. But this time I did none of it. I kept on walking, listening to the sound of the two intersections of my pants rubbing against each other's water-drenched surface. The streets were almost completely empty, except for an older man and a few teens running off to different locations. It made the raindrops tapping against the hard ground even more outstanding to me. As I lowered my head. After about 10 minutes of walking in the heavy rain, the strong sensation burning behind my eyelids made it too difficult to keep my eyes from Washington. I felt tears run down my cheeks as I sobbed. There, before her bloom-adorned grave I stood, accompanied by nothing but the crow's lonely singing, and what I hoped would be my best friend's long since lost embrace. My mom used to say we were inseparable as kids. Not a day passed that we wouldn't share with one another. She and I roamed the world in a constant search for adventure. To young souls with a hunger to swallow the world we adored and knew so little about. We first met on a beautiful summer day. I sat in a handcrafted swing in our backyard. My father had tee it for me himself, since he'd always been quite handy and didn't feel like spending money on things he could make on his own. I sat there, glancing up at the sky. It was like the secret work of an unidentified artist, their canvas covered in blue, spotted with just a few droplets of white paint. Whilst swinging my small, pale legs back and forth, allowing myself to go higher and higher, I was suddenly interrupted by a cheerful tone I heard from behind my back. I turned around to see a young girl hanging over the wooden fence between us. "Hey," I said, happily jumping off the swing. "Wanna go play in the woods? It's no fun being out here on my own." She looked at me for a second, then leapt over the fence, her eyes glowing with excitement. "I never thought you'd ask. Come on," she said, and grabbed my arm. And with that, me and Leona began our very first adventure together. Birds dressed in shimmering feathers sailed through the air as the sea of grass and blooming flowers below them swayed in the warm breeze which helped carrying them to their next destination. They softly allowed their songs to echo through the air, almost too eager for your peaceful melodies to attract a new partner. Leona danced around the trees like a whirlwind, taking in every fascinating detail about our gorgeous surroundings. We stopped at several places to look at different insects and discuss their strange appearance, watched the birds fly high up in the sky, and sang as we collected flowers in the fields. As it got dark, we both darted down the streets to our homes, struggling to explain to our parents why we'd been out so late. But every second together was worth more than gold. Every summer's day was just the same. She'd knock on my door and I'd sprint out into the wild with my newfound friend, often leaving my half-eaten breakfast behind, causing my mom to yell at me in the distance as we ran. Our dresses and the trees surrounding us would blow in the wind in harmony. We'd laugh and do each other's hair. We'd have snowball fights and build snowmen every winter. And once school started, we sat together on the bus, discussing different subjects and drawing in our paint books. With time, though, Leona began spending more and more time at home after school. I asked her why that was. why she couldn't come out and play, but she'd only look down into the ground and bite her lower lip as if she was trying to come up with a less complicated answer than the actual truth. She'd blame it on homework, even though we had none, or that her dad was taking her somewhere, though she'd never say where. After a few months, I stopped questioning her strange behavior, and instead I spent all the more time alone trying to find something that could make up for the loss of my friend. I sat in the forest one day later that same year, watching the colorful leaves fall to the ground all around me. I grabbed a handful of them and tried talking to them for a while, but it didn't take long for the cold wind to rip them all out of my grasp. Leaving me alone on the icy ground, I sobbed uncontrollably, thinking of my old friend, of the times we'd spent on that exact spot, the topics we discussed, and all the things we'd drawn and sung. For just a second I was overcome with terror as I realized the sensation. I was being watched. I turned around to face whoever was staring holes into the back of my head and saw a young boy. I waved at him to come play, and he started talking to me as if we'd known each other for years. It was amazing to finally have found someone to play with. We wandered through the slowly decaying forest, taking care not to disturb any nearby animals. It was beautiful, each tree decorated in the colors of autumn. After a few minutes, the young boy suddenly stopped and stared straight at me. I looked back at him and asked what was wrong. No response. Almost as if in slow motion, his face began to melt before me as all light disappeared into shadow. I parted my lips to let out a scream of horror, but soon noticed no sound whatsoever could be he. I checked my surroundings and watched as faces formed within the bark of each tree, smiling and crawling around like insects. I screamed and cried as I hit the deformed creature repeatedly with a large rock. The sound of its bones cracking became louder and more disturbing with each hit, and its shrieks and laughs more difficult to withstand. I wanted nothing more but to recall. In horror, I could feel my heart race with terror as I desperately tried to keep on slamming the rock into its face. My arm went almost limp as I sobbed, asking myself what the hell I was doing. Before I knew it, I could see the tender pinkish meat around the figure's empty sockets, how the rock repeatedly dug deep into its skin and ripped each moist, bloody piece from its very bones, which I was making a vigorous effort to crush to pieces. For a minute or two I stopped and stared into its eyes, as if peering into its very soul. It placed its hand on my cold, sweaty cheek as its body began to melt back into what used to be my beloved Leona. I gasped at the sight of my mangled friend and tried over and over to rip her back into consciousness, but it was hopeless. I stared at the rock in my hands and threw it away in horror. This last moment with Leona shattered my whole world for the rest of my entire life. I never knew schizophrenia was running in the family. Story 4. A haunted house in Siakat. This story comes from my dad, and he was around 18 at the time of this particular incident. It was summertime, so he went visiting relatives in a city called Siakat. His maternal family was based there, living in a few houses in a small cluster. A few of his cousins and one of his uncles, Uncle Arshad, who was also quite young, being around 25 at the time, also joined him there. During their stay, they heard a few stories of a house their family owned. It was located to houses down the street and was an occupied house at the time. Its only utility was that the courtyard, which was open to the sky, was used as a gym of sorts by the local bodybuilders during daytime. One of the stories they were told was that of a local bodybuilder named Manna. Manna was alone lifting weights there one day, and one time after getting up to stretch after lifting something particularly heavy, he was patted on the back and told well done, only he knew there was no one else in the room. He had stopped being there alone after that. My dad and his uncle were quite excited after hearing all that, and being young and foolish, they decided to spend a night there. They were warned against it. A few of the elders, including their maternal grandfather, calling them fools for meddling in things you do not understand, but their minds were set. In the end, they decided that they would enter the house after dark, a little before midnight, and sleep there, leaving just after daybreak. Since the house was not in use, they decided to sleep on the roof on charpais, which is a traditional woven bed in the Indian subcontinent. They also instructed their watchmen to lock the main door after they had entered, to ensure no one else could enter after them, and to come open the door immediately after daybreak. Apparently the watchman laughed after hearing this, and told them he would keep the key ready, because they would be calling him long for that. The next night, before they were supposed to go to the house, one of their elders told them to try something. He told them to set up a carom board in the courtyard and just leave it there untouched and check it some time after. They set it up in the house as instructed and carried their charpais to the roof after that. It was difficult doing all of it in the dark, since the house did not have an electric supply. Their only source of light was an oil lantern, and the light it cast was dim and yellow, but they were still happy with the lack of ghost stings. They spent the first hour playing cards, and nothing seemed to happen. Much more relaxed about the house, they began to wonder what everyone was on about. And then, during one of the rounds, they heard the unmistakable sound of the hand pump in the courtyard being worked, and the sound of water flowing. They were 4 floors up on the roof, but that sound still sent a shiver through them. They tried to ignore it the best they could, but the hand pump continued pumping water on its own. Much quieter now. They tried to keep playing cards, but around 1 a.m. they just gave up and decided to sleep instead. My dad slept on one of the charpais on the edge, and slept like a rock till he was woken up by someone shaking him. He got up to the frightened face of one of his cousins. He pointed to Uncle Arshad, who had been sleeping in his boxes on the far edge. It was then that he noticed that he seemed to be writhing in pain, clutching his throat. They tried to shake him awake, but it took a whole minute, filled with the fear of what was happening, to wake him up. Uncle Arshad woke up, breathing heavily and still clutching his throat. He looked at them and said, "We had to leave this place. Nah, it is 3 a.m. already." One of the other cousins said, "We only need to wait an hour or so more, and then I want to leave this place now, and I will jump from the roof to do that if I have to." They were even more frightened. After that, they decided to leave, but remembered that the house entrance was still locked. So they started shouting to get the watchman's tie-in. Soon enough, though, they got the attention of my dad's grandfather instead, who had been sleeping on the roof of his house, anticipating something of the sort. After a few choice curses, he sent for the watchman and told them that he would be waiting for them downstairs. They still had to climb down the stairs, though. For flights of stairs in pitch-black darkness with nothing but the dim light of the lantern to guide them, they climbed down, slowly and with much arguing about who would climb down first and who would be at the rear. They kept their eyes nearly shut and tried not to look around them, since they kept imagining things in the dark, looking back at them, or perhaps one of them being dragged off. And Uncle Arshad was still clutching his throat, the image of him ithing still fresh in all of their heads. When they finally got to the courtyard, they went past the carom board, and all of them noticed that all the pieces were now in the pockets and they finally got to the door. The watchman was waiting for them with a large smile on his face. "So are all you young ones done here? Has your warm blood run cold yet?" he said, laughing at them. After they were out of the house, they asked Uncle Arshad what had happened, but he refused to tell them anything till he was out of the darkness. So they took him to a street lamp, and they sat under it till he calmed down and stopped shivering with fear, and then he told them his story. "As I fell asleep, I dreamt that I was in the house. I walked down to the courtyard, and in my dream I started urinating there. Just then an old man with a long-beard and terrifying eyes came and grabbed me by the throat. He shouted, 'How dare you defile this sacred place?' and lifted my up in the air with one hand. I was helpless, kicking and gasping for air, when all of you woke me." After he told them the story, he finally took his hands off his throat. Even in the lamplight they could clearly see the bloody blue mark of a hand right across his neck. Writer's note: this particular story comes from my father, and has always been one that took my imagination to places I did not want to visit. I could have taken my father for his word, but for the sake of keeping this account factual, I tried to confirm its details from two different people. During my attempt to validate it, I found that not only is this incident and the haunting of the building in question real, but there are people living in that house today who deal with this sort of phenomenon on a regular basis. Author S. Note: this is a part of a collection of real-life horror stories and memoirs currently being collected and compiled by Sam and Shahid Khan. For more, please visit and follow the writer's blog at http://compulsivetypist.wordpress.com. Story 5, White Nose. I noticed it almost immediately. The phenomenon began one day while I was still an undergrad in college. My alarm went off, and I grudgingly let it ring for a few seconds before ending it, yanking the covers off my body and pulling myself out of bed. I had only gotten a few hours of sleep. My muscles were stiff as I shivered in the morning cold, and my footfalls were heavy as I made my way to the bathroom. That's when my brain registered something odd. It was this sound. The sound of my lumbering footsteps across the carpet of my second-story apartment, the annoying whines of the aging floor I was so used to hearing every morning. It was off by just a beat, as if there was a lag in the deliverance of the noise, short enough for me to almost dismiss it, and long enough so that I didn't. When I made it to the bathroom, I did my business and flushed the toilet. Again, the sound of rushing water came maybe half a second after the water in the bowl had started swirling. The same occurred with the sink faucet. Am I that tired? I mumbled to myself through a mouthful of frothy toothpaste. I suddenly lurched back. What the hell, I thought, staring at the frightened, wide-eyed version of myself in mirror. It happened to my voice. There was a haunting delay in it, too, like listening to the sound if your echo come back to you after shouting off the top of a mountain, or like an eerie vocalization mimicking your words in the same exact voice. My words were late, and they didn't feel like why own. Quickly I rinsed my mouth and struggled to wash the worrying from my face. Surely it was just a case of morning jitters. I was just tired from the lack of sleep, and was registering everything late. Yeah, that seemed like the most reasonable explanation. I got dressed and ready as fast I could, trying my damn hardest to ignore the plethora of jarring noises that were occurring at just the wrong moments, closing the closet, zipping my backpack, locking the door, all of them off by just a beat, and I couldn't fucking ignore it. When I was outside heading to my car, I decided to measure how long the delay was. In one hand, I had my phone with the stopwatch application on screen, and in the other, my car remote. I pressed the button to unlock my car. The same time I started the timer, I stopped it once I heard the sound of the beep of my vehicle, and saw that the noise was off by 0.53 seconds. I did the same thing when I shut my car doors, inserted the keys into the ignition, and listened for the engine roar. The times averaged to 0.5 seconds. I rolled down the windows as I sat in my car. I wondered about the other noises I why ignored on a daily basis, that I was paying attention to. Now were the birds chirping overhead, singing late, too. What about the man using a leaf blower on the sidewalk, or the car that just drove by? Are all the noises being delayed, or is just me? I racked my brain for answers, and came to the conclusion that this physically cannot be possible. Then I wondered what would happen if I was isolated in an area completely devoid of sound and I made a noise. What then would I hear in that half a second before my own voice reaches my eardrums? Nothing, right? I should hear nothing. This is if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Type of shit, I thought to myself, and decided to test out my earlier thought. At rate, I was okay with being late to lecture, so I rolled up my car windows and sat in silence inside my car. Hello, I mouthed at nothing. Car crash. I faintly heard my voice under the alarming screech of rubber tires suddenly grating against pavement. I looked to the intersection beside the parking lot just in time to see a minivan coming at full speed connect with the side of a sedan. I covered my mouth with my hands before I could let out a small, holy shit. The impact had thrown the driver of the minivan out of his seat and through the windshield, where his mangled body laid strewn across the asphalt along with car debris and glass shards. Drivers from the surrounding vehicles alongside witnessing pedestrians rushed to the wounded, too. Half attended to the body of the man that was still limp on ground, while the other half frantically pried at the crumpled car door of the sedan. The other person was crushed underneath, and I couldn't tell if he or she was still alive. Sirens. I turned my head in the direction of the ambulances and police cars that were approaching in the near distance. Half a second later, I noticed faces, and my peripheral vision do the same. When the sirens flooded the air around us, dread coagulated in the middle of my throat, and I struggled to swallow it down. After that moment, confirmed by many others that followed, I realized it wasn't my brain that was processing noise slower than other people. No, that simply wasn't the case. For some reason, on some supernatural happenstance, the speed of sound had just become slower, for me a lag in its velocity by just a detent in those 0.5 seconds of delay. There was a new voice in my head. After the first time it spoke, it never left, whispering things that shouldn't have been known, telling me everything that was going to be heard. I never adjusted to it. It was a perverted rape of my consciousness that haunted me like a curse in the following year. I knew my sister had miscarried before the doctor announced it. I knew my brother-in-law had killed himself before we heard the gunshot. I knew my fiancé was inside another woman before she even moaned. So when I was finally driven mad enough to the point where scissors were pressed against the entrance of my ear, and I was ready to drive the blades straight into my brain, his voice whispered something different. It wasn't an announcement nor a narration. It was a command: live. The next thing I remembered was waking up in the hospital with bandages covering the entirety of my head. I remember looking up and seeing a nurse that was tending to my fore. I asked her what had happened, but I never heard my voice come out. She mouthed something at me. I can't hear anything, I tried to say, and she looked at me with wide brown eyes filled with pity. She saw the pen and paper that was placed on the tray beside me, and she wrote something down. I looked at the message and was overcome with complete and utter joy. I had succeeded. The dreadful voice, the disgusting curse, the intruder in my consciousness was no more. I am finally free, I thought to myself, feeling warm, wet tears stream down my face. I'll never hear it again. The nurse stared at me with a frightened, confused expression as my body convulsed from uncontrollable laughter, scream. The voice spoke through her lips just a beat before I drove the pen into her throat. Story 6, Dying Light. During that uncanny hour, when night and day become one, shadows crawl throughout the house, searching for scraps of light to feast upon. The candle burning at my side casts a luminous dish upon my withered face, a feast to commemorate the splitting of this world where once my thoughts were fixated on days yet to come. Now they desperately seek solace within the bittersweet memories of a bygone yesterday. How queer it is lay upon this bed, with body worn and broken, knowing that at a moment's rest the gray-cowled specter of the end will come to greet me. Time has stripped me of my health and vigor, but I will not be consumed with ease. The shadows be damned. Let them starve another day. Sleep has called to me night after night, but I have yet to yield. Many would say I am mad for waging this war of attrition, but what do those fools know? What do the living know of the nightmares that lie in wait upon the horizon that separates waking life from dreamless infinity? They know nothing. I will continue this battle until I lose all sense and reason. Let those who seek to take this life from me rot within the crevices and corners of my crumbling domain. Autumn's whispers slip through the slightly open window, beckoning the flame on my candle to dance. The shadows scatter in response, scuttling for purchase on the walls of my chamber. Their relentless desire to encroach upon all that I hold dear tethers them to me, until their duty to their master is served and the light in my eyes has been torn out and devoured. They will persist. I pull up my covers, awkwardly aware of how childlike I must seem. Shame frightens me less the what was that. A tap on my window, my heart gallops as I turn my head to look. Deep within my being, a deafening cry of mortal terror swells. It tries to break free, but emerges as an impotent, almost silent gasp. Perched upon the exterior windowsill was a horror beyond comprehension. Two silver moons peered out at me with unwavering malice and disdain. Matted gray fur, illuminated by the twilight sky, swayed ominously in the breeze. He has finally arrived. White panic drives me to act. I cross my arms, hands clutching my sides tightly. My voice returns, "You will not reap my soul." The menace at my window did not waver. "Go away and leave me be." The two round pits of mercury that where its eyes neither blinked nor looked away. Fear overtakes whatever strength I feign to have, and my voice becomes a murmur. "Please, I do not wish to go." The wretched creature opens its mouth and lets out a deafening shriek. Tendrils scratch and tear as they work their way through my ear canals. The sharp, discordant notes pierce my eardrums like jagged shards of glass. My covers flutter as I pull them over me. The candle light flails frantically, and the shadows rave. The drumming of a heart reverberates throughout, gradually increasing in intensity. My temples throb with each thump as crimson magma courses, wild and uncontrolled, through my veins. With forehead damp with sweat, I lay completely submerged within my quilt. What am I to do now? That vile thing wishes to spirit me away. No, 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 I will not let it. I must keep it out. The window, the cursed thing, is still ajar. It needs to be shut, clutching my chest in a futile attempt to calm the wild stampede inside. I pull off the comforter and will myself upright. The ruins that were once lithe and well-muscled legs tremble feebly as I slowly slide them off the bed. My feet hit the floor like wet rags, and my bones rattle. The first step almost brings me to my knees, but I manage to keep my balance. Fear and desperation propels me forward as I approach my destination. Upon arriving, I am struck by a nightmarish realization: the beast is nowhere to be seen. Outside, gnarled tree branches continue their somber waltz. I shut the window and turn to face the looming shadows that stretch out before me. My candle continues to burn, small and insignificant, amongst the all-encompassing pitch-black nothingness. Silence echoes throughout the house. What used to be a place of familiarity and comfort now looked very alien and perilous. I can feel his presence permeating the very air I breathe. This is no longer my home. He has taken it, just as he plans on taking me. There is no telling when or where he will appear again, but I will not stay to welcome him. With knees trembling, I struggle to my candle, wax pooled below the diminished flame. This is the only weapon I have against the scavengers infesting my dwelling. Before the light is extinguished, I must be away from here. Candle in hand, I move towards the direction of my front door. With each step, sinister figures take form on the walls. No doubt they have come to mock me. Pestilence, smiling, jumps about with mischievous glee. What foul misdeeds he has done to me! To have been cursed with this bent and rotten body was the cruelest of tricks. Damn you! Each word uttered was strained under my labored breathing. I cannot stop now. Step by agonizing step, my salvation draws nearer. Another figure manifests in the dim light of my candle. My heart nearly stops at the sight of it. Elizabeth, my dear Elizabeth. Oh, how can this be? I have not seen your face since my youth. That was so long ago. Why, you have not aged at all. How is this possible? I have. I have gotten so old, but you are still just as beautiful as I remember. Tear, as full of pain and regret, caress my lips. The shame of standing before her, withered and decrepit, was too much to bear. Time is a blight upon man. What greater evil is there than to provide a person with the flame of life, only to have them watch it slowly fade away as the years pass? How unfair it is to make a person strive to become whole, all the while pieces of them are chipped away by the ticking of a clock. It is maddening and utterly terrifying. But here was Elizabeth, eyes and hair like honey and skin fair and untarnished. I reach out to her. I need to feel her, to take hold of her, to feel love and life again. Just then the candle flickers for an instant. In that momentary darkness, something changed. Elizabeth still stood before me, however. Her face, oh dear God, her face, the flesh had been peeled away, revealing a hideous blackened skull. Maggots dripped like spittle from the tiny gaps between her cracked and decayed teeth. Empty eye sockets, lacking any indicate, iron of conscience or empathy, gazed at me. I clutched my chest in agony, heart attempting to burst through bone and flesh. The door, I turn and run, one leg after the other, one shallow breath after the next. I make it to the door. My violently shaking hand fumbles with the locks. A woman's wail full of anguish stiffens the hairs on my neck, but I dare not look behind. Emmy, the final lock disengages. I have done it. I swing the door open and I see him. The pale glowing eyes, the silver fur. Death, the candle slips out of my hand as I sink tea. Oh, the floor, my heart grows silent. The small orange flame hits the ground and goes out. Story 7. Camp 22. Many North Korean defectors and ex-prisoners can testify to the fact that there was a camp in that turret, or a witch house more evil than anything else witnessed. It is called Camp 22, or the Horyong concentration camp. It is a torture camp originally intended for political enemies of the nation. It eventually broadened their targets to anyone they could capture. Anyone who was sent there also had their families sent there, as it was completely isolated from the rest of the world, not Eve, and satellites were allowed to map the area. Anyone who was abducted and brought to Camp 22 were destined to die there. Prisoners in Camp 22 were forced to perform agricultural, mining, and factory labor until the day they die, and any insubordination would be punished by rape, starvation, torture, mutilation, and death, which also could extend to their entire family. Much of the time, even completely obedient prisoners would be brought to the private execution site for the guards' entertainment. None of the torture and experimentation done there seemed to have any purpose, as no information was being extracted from the victims, and none of the people abducted were of any political or ideological importance, just seemingly captured at random en masse. The experiments were of no military value either, as no reports were ever written on the results. The reason so much unnecessary cruelty was allowed in Camp 22 was to trigger the development of something the administrative staff referred to as the white monsters. This was denied by the North Korean government, along with the existence of the camp itself, after the defection and closing of Camp 22, but was reported by guards who left the camp If any prisoners held in this camp ever survived, they could testify to this. The program in charge of the surgeries required the doctors to drink alcohol before they did surgery on the promising subjects, so any strange occurrences they witnessed can be attributed to their drunken state. Inexperienced doctors were required to torture the living subjects until they went into shock, and then were instructed to strike them in the head with a hammer to cause brain damage. Often, this resulted in death, but as some of the defected guards and doctors reported, this wouldn't kill them or even leave them brain dead. Almost immediately after they die, their vitals began functioning again. One Dr. Day cried that a body deflated and inflated again, as if the wound to the subject's head allowed his soul to leave, but allow something else to enter. When prisoners die, they are taken with a cargo coach and burned in a furnace until they melted and no traces remained. Those who did not die from sickness or suffering were taken to a secret execution site. However, many who were taken to the secret execution site were not always crushed or shot to death. Many of them were put into a solitary room where the experiment subjects were held. No guards or administrative staff were ever allowed into this room except to deposit the subjects there. Otherwise, the white monsters might be tempted to leave. The white monsters were always believed to be an in-joke amongst the guards of camps to keep new recruits from biohazardous areas, and the people dumped in the building were disposed of by separate workers. Eventually, when Camp 22 was nearing a shutdown, many of the prisoni were transferred to other camps for continued detainment. While a large number were executed, it is believed that the remaining unaccounted prisoners starved to death, even resorting to eating each other to stay alive in the abandoned prison, which was locked after the staff left. However, it is believed that when Camp 22's status was no longer valid, the administrative staff quit, ordering the guards to put people and confiscated children in the solitary chamber and just shoot them. As the days passed by, guards began to hear unsettling noises from the solitary chamber there, as if there were things still alive in there, stirring and looking for a way out. Curious guards questioned the administrators about what was being held in there and why, and after receiving their answer, they defected the first opportunity they had, distancing themselves from the horrors of North Korea as soon as possible, while those who remained were killed by their fellow soldiers under a secret order, as many of the prisoners abandoned in there would not eat their own family members or murder each other to stay alive. It is thought an unrelated third party wiped out and cannibalized the remaining prisoners, the third party which was locked away in those buildings. Camp 22 was not just a torture camp filled with homicidal psychopaths who were paid to punish and kill the prisoners set there. It was a breeding ground for something even more horrible than savage men, beyond hounds trained to kill children, beyond inebriated doctors performing unnecessary body-deforming surgeries. It was the place where the Agma, the white monster, was born, the personification of all the cruelty, death, rape, and suffering in North Korea, and the only place where it could find bodies that were vacated solely for its use. Only in a place where death and suffering saturates the soul could such creatures be born. Even after Camp 22's closing, an unsettling fact still remained, as their other concentration camps have not been closed. and the execution grounds of each one have a building that the staff are recommended to stay away from. Trucks are seen loading boxes out of the cabs filled with coal and corn, but also take on additional unmarked cargo similar to animal cages. Why the North Korean government continue to transport these creatures in secrecy is unknown. However, it is evident that they are not limited to their own borders when releasing them. Sightings of AGMA are in every country on the planet. Truck drivers are seeing pure white humans skulking across the roads at night. Hunters are finding human footprints next to their own tracks. Pale human-like animals creeping along the rooftops in many T-zones are sighted constantly, sunken pure black eyes and sharp talons being a common trait amongst descriptions of them. The ability to speak languages and to have otherworldly powers like invisibility, teleporting, telepathy, or mind control are attributed to them. Many young children who have disappeared have drawn pictures of creatures that look like the AGMA of North Korea, and while they differ from picture to picture, their major shape and attributes remain constant. Every day a new AGMA is born, ready to find its way into another town, ready to stalk and kill another person in or family. With how long and how often Camp 20 to brought bodies to their off-limits buildings, there would be enough of these entities to have one in every city in America, and the numbers are continuing to rise with the efficiency that North Korea concentration camps produce them. It is unknown if they are weak to contemporary weaponry, but the lack of recorded kills or recovered bodies does not play in its favor. It is unknown if North Korea influenced the behavior of these creatures in any way, or just unleashed them in their dormant state on unsuspecting populaces to see what happens. So on enough, their numbers will be too high. Soon enough, proof of them will be undeniable. Soon enough, there will be no place on earth to escape them. The only conclusion or advice one can take from these facts is that they should keep their loved ones close, spend more time with them, and be wary of the darkness outside their homes. When the AGMA no longer have to hide in the dark of night, our world will become a nightmare that surpasses Camp 22.